The movie kicks off with a woman named Chan Clark taking a morning walk while talking with someone on the phone. Unexpectedly, she notices someone following her, and it sets her on edge. Trying to get away from the sight of the mysterious man, she picks up her pace. All of a sudden, the man attacks her from behind. Bree is a divorced woman whose ex-husband, Michael, is a suspect in a market manipulation scheme. He was imprisoned, and Bree has to wear a house arrest for a year. She'll be living in their lake house, with a monitoring system installed in her anklet. On the very first day of her house arrest, she gets a creeping suspicion that someone is watching. This feeling keeps her company the entire stay, though she cannot determine the reason for its presence. Bree's lawyer, Sophie, who happens to be one of her best friends, gives Bree an aquarium as a house arrest warming gift. She tries to cheer Bree up by reminding her that she lives in a multi-million house with a lake view and a fancy wine cellar. These are luxuries that most people can only dream of, but the luxuries that the house provides do nothing to help Bree's declining mental state. Nancy, a police officer hired by the court, visits her every month. When she visits Bree on day 96, Bree wants her to stay there for longer. Nancy understands her situation and advises her to do something creative, like learn a new skill. At night, someone breaks in through the terrace door. Bree is stunned when she hears the sound of glass breaking and doesn't know what to do. The alarm system has been disarmed too. Curiously, the intruder who broke in that night did not harm her. The next morning, she calls Sophie and tells her about the previous night. Bree knows she cannot call the police for help because they are not on good terms. Worried about her friend, Sophie calls Joe, a detective from the police department, to ask for help. Bree's first meeting with Joe does not go well. He instantly gets on her nerves when the very first question he asks is about the man of the house. Then, he starts blaming Bree for leaving the doors open, talking about the cameras. Bree discloses that her ex-husband did not like having them in their vacation house. Before leaving, Joe gives his card to Bree in case she needs any further personal assistance. Later that day, Bree finds undergarments that do not belong to her. Furious at the possibility of Michael cheating on her, she throws all of his belongings into a fire. The next morning, Bree realizes the intruder broke in again. This time, they did not break in through the door, but took photographs instead. Bree suspects that the intruder is someone she knows. Feeling the urgency of the situation, Sophie asks Bree to hire a personal bodyguard to keep her safe. She gives her a card for Xavier, a security guard that she knows personally. Bree does what is asked and hires him. Xavier, a man of strong physical attributes and emotional fortitude, makes Bree finally comfortable in her own house. Michael gives Bree a call. He has been released from prison and is coming to see her. Meanwhile, Xavier informs Bree about Cheyenne Clark's case. He suggests that there could be some similarity between that woman and the scenario that is now happening to her. But Bree insists that it has to do with Michael. She thinks that it is Michael who is doing all of this. He made her life hell before he was imprisoned, and apparently, being incarcerated did nothing to stop him. Confined to the house with nothing to do, Xavier and Bree quickly grow attracted to each other. They get intimate, and Bree starts appreciating Sophie's brilliant suggestion to hire him. Later, Bree asks Xavier why he always carries posters of Cheyenne with him. Xavier reveals the truth. Cheyenne Clark was his sister, who moved into this town before disappearing 2 years ago. People are starting to forget her, but he does not want that to happen. Michael gets around to visiting Bree in their lake house. There, he discovers that someone is disturbing her wife mentally. He is really worried about her, but Bree insists that he is behind it. She wants him to own up to it so they can both move on. When he finds out how many bottles of wine she consumed over the last few months, his worry grows. Though they are now divorced, he still cares about her. That night, Bree lays in bed, half awake. Bizarre things start to happen around the house. The lights begin blinking on and off, and access to her system is denied over and over again. The house's automatic systems have been breached. In the midst of all of this, a stranger with a black mask and black clothes descends from the stairs and strikes her from behind. Bree loses consciousness. When she regains consciousness, Xavier discovers some cameras installed in suspicious places. They believe that Michael has been using these cameras to monitor her. He calls one of his friends, who is an expert in this technology. His friend knows how to hack the monitoring system and misguide the police. This may give her some time to step out of her house. She tells them that her device has some kind of GPS associated with the SIM card in her phone. They plan to block her SIM card, which would make the police assume that there is a signal issue. This will buy them even more time. Bree agrees to the plan. They want to go to Michael's house and obtain the hard drive, which they believe the camera recording is stored on. Bree knows every nook and cranny in Michael's house and cannot let Xavier go alone. The day of the plan comes. They start with Bree in her basement and interrupt the signal there. They leave for Michael's house. When they get there, they quickly break in through the door. With some difficulty, they attain the hard drive in Michael's phone and come back safely to their own lake house. There, they run into a problem. Nancy has brought the police force with her after she realized that Bree was not responding. However, Bree leverages the situation with some emotional manipulation, also known as blackmail. Nancy takes pity on her and lets her off the hook. Still filled with adrenaline after their successful heist, Xavier and Bree get intimate again. Their feelings harden from attraction into love. Xavier comes up with a theory when he finds striking proof that Cheyenne and Michael knew each other. When he dialed the recent number from Cheyenne's mobile, whom she was talking to just before disappearing, Michael's mobile rang. When Xavier leaves for work, Joe comes to visit Bree. He warns Bree about Xavier, whom he claims has a threatening background. He suspects Xavier in the disappearance of Chan and informs Bree about his criminal record. Bree receives a call from the police department. Michael was the victim in a hit-and-run case. Now worried about Michael, Bree begins to believe Joe's story. The department has clear evidence that puts Xavier under suspicion. The truck that hit Michael is the same as Xavier's. Completely convinced of his guilt, Bree asks Xavier to leave the next time she sees him. She's hurt, but not because she was wrong about him. What hurts the most is that she is still in love with him, despite his crimes. That night, Sophie calms Bree down and sleeps at her house. The intruder breaks in again. When Bree wakes up, she finds her hands tied together firmly with a rope. When she tries to unleash the rope, her chair falls. This gains the attention of the stranger. To Bree's shock, Xavier is also lying on the couch helplessly. The stranger informs them of the truth. There is no detective named Joe in the police department. He unveils his face, and Bree is shocked. It's Joe. The man Sophie trusted was behind all of this. Furious, Bree starts putting up a fight. She tries to knock him out with her heels. When Joe goes to attack Bree, Xavier easily takes hold of him. Xavier asks Bree to calm down. They don't need to escalate the situation further. But Bree is angry, and she has a lot of questions. Why did Joe target Chan and her? Why just them? What was the motive behind all of this? What is the relationship between Chan and her? All these questions are still unanswered. Bree unleashes these secrets by herself when she looks at the drive recording. She finds out that Sophie is guilty, too. Bree finds records of Sophie and Chan with Michael. Sophie liked Michael, but he was not very interested in her. He was much more interested in Chan at that time. Sophie could not accept it. With the help of Joe, she planned to eliminate Chan, and they were successful. But when they succeeded, her brother Xavier was after them. He was close to finding out the secrets behind the circumstances that happened with his sister. Xavier was quickly becoming a vital threat to Sophie. He would expose her crimes to the rest of the world once he found out. So, Sophie hired Joe to bring Bree's physical and mental health down through the break-ins. She then introduced Joe to her as a detective from the police department. After making Bree believe her life was under threat, she advised her to hire Xavier as a personal guard. She made sure that Bree and Xavier grew close. After all this, Joe fed Bree lies about Xavier, leaving her weak and helpless with only Joe to turn to. But what Sophie really wanted was for Bree to be eliminated. Then, she would pin her demise on Xavier. Of course, it did not happen because Xavier has her back. Bree was truly alone in the dark throughout the movie, especially during the attacks and break-ins. Despite being under house arrest in an opulent mansion, she was always in the dark by virtue of being imprisoned and hunted down by Sophie.